I'm going to be bringing back a video series that I did last summer where I previewed each of the Browns' positions before the upcoming season. We're going to start with the quarterback room because even though it is a few months out from the beginning of week one, the Browns went into training camp last offseason with 4 quarterbacks in their room. They currently have 4 quarterbacks on the roster now. I'm pretty safe. I feel like I'm pretty safe in betting that these are going to be the 4 quarterbacks heading into the training camp and the preseason games this offseason. So I'm going to start with all these videos with who I believe are locks for the roster and move my way on down. Starting obviously with Deshaun Watson. He is definitely the starter. The organization gave him that massive contract, and he is their guy. They traded for him. They gave him a contract that nobody in the NFL has ever gotten. And, we'll see how that can work out because the last season in 6 games, he, after he got suspended for bad and predatory behavior, which is not really an opinionated stance. If you look at the reasoning behind the NFL suspension and even the arbitrator that gave him the initial 6-game suspension, the reasoning isn't all that different as to what conclusions they came to. It's just that the arbitrator gave the 6-game punishment based on what she believed the NFL had set precedent for those kinds of incidents, where the NFL was probably looking for more of a punitive damage punishment than that arbitrator gave for 6 games. So last season in the 6 games he was available to play in, he threw for 1,102 yards, 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 58% completion percentage, career lows in yards per attempt, yards per completion, and yards per game. I understand it is a smaller sample size, but it definitely isn't. It wasn't the most encouraging start. However, the expectation and the gamble that the Browns took on Deshaun Watson wasn't that he would be lights out in his first 6 games. It's that he would use those 6 games to kind of get the rust off. He would have a full off season, and now that he's going to be the starting quarterback from day one, he's going to be able to light it up from the get-go. And the year 2 and beyond of this contract is going to work out for the Browns much better than year 1. That is what they're hoping for. That is what they're gambling on. And honestly, he did show flashes of that play that we saw back in 2020 with Houston. That second half against Washington was really encouraging. That game, I believe, against the Saints, that was pretty much in a blizzard. He had a couple of passes that should have been for sure touchdowns, but they were just dropped. And his scrambling ability is still very much there to keep plays alive and stuff like that. So it's not like he didn't show any flashes of good play, and it wasn't just he was completely awful the entire year. But he did post a lot of career low numbers for him. He recently did have a pretty electric 7-on-7 drill with the Browns. Although with stuff like that, I'm not going to really get my hopes up until I see it in regular season action, because we can talk all we want about reps in training camp and reps in practice, or even reps in preseason games where he can look good. But I don't really think there's any sort of proper way to replicate what you get when the games start to matter in the regular season. Moving on down, I still think this guy is a roster lock, but he's definitely the backup, Joshua Dobbs. Now, he was with the Browns organization throughout last offseason and into the regular season of last year. However, he was waived in late November. He was picked up by the Lions to be put on the practice squad, where he was then nabbed by the Tennessee Titans, and he played 2 games with Tennessee, totaling 411 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. So he was very serviceable in those games. I think backup is a solid way to describe Joshua Dobbs. I wouldn't even say premium backup like the Browns had with Jacoby Brissett and maybe arguably Case Keenum in the last few years with this regime. I would certainly put Joshua Dobbs squarely in the backup option. Definitely the Browns' plan for quarterback number 2, unless maybe one of the guys I mentioned later, Kellen Mond or Dorian Thompson-Robinson, unless they go absolutely nuts. Now, he did look pretty good last preseason. I do believe he is the kind of quarterback that is going to look good in the preseason because he's a veteran guy. He's been around the league for a while, and he does know how to sauce up maybe some bad teams, second and third guys. I think the concern with Joshua Dobbs might be, maybe he can definitely be reliable in a pinch, but if something happens, like let's say Deshaun Watson gets a long-term injury, I'm not sure if I can put the kind of faith in Joshua Dobbs to steady a season for the Browns. Like I wasn't even that comfortable with Jacoby Brissett being a long-term starter, and he ended up playing better than most people expected him to. I'm even less comfortable with Joshua Dobbs taking the reins of a team for for any prolonged period of time, even with the solid roster that the Browns have. I'm not sure if Joshua Dobbs is going to be is that kind of guy. Now, if the Browns have it their way, they won't have to worry about that. Deshaun Watson will be healthy and he'll be playing well, and Joshua Dobbs will just be the trusty backup that's, there if he's needed. But moving on down to players who I think are on the bubble of making the roster, we'll start with Kellen Mond. He was claimed off of waivers from Minnesota late last August in 2022. And he didn't play any time for Cleveland, although he was kept on the 53-man roster ever since he was claimed off of waivers. He has 3 total NFL attempts with 2 completions for a grand total of 5 yards. And I saw on a Pro Football Reference that his longest completion was 6 yards. So he has 1 pass for 6 yards and 1 pass for a -1 yards, respectively. 2 years left on his rookie deal. He is entering his 3rd season out of Texas A&M. The front office might see him as a system fit. I think he is a guy who is able to mobilize and move, but we haven't really seen him play any meaningful football in a Cleveland Browns uniform. He wasn't even on the team in the offseason or in preseason, so we haven't really seen him in action much in a Browns uniform. I'm sure the coaches have seen him in practice. Maybe he's shown some encouraging signs there, but as far as what Kellen Mond can do in a Cleveland Browns uniform, it's mostly a mystery. And that moves us on to the rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson, picked in the 5th round out of UCLA, in a pick the Browns acquired from the Los Angeles Rams. He ran a 4.56 at the NFL Combine as his 40 time. His UCLA stats last season as a senior: 3,169 yards in 13 games played. I believe that does include the bowl game he played in. 27 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 69.6% completion percentage, along with 12 rushing touchdowns. That is an encouraging stat line, but again, there is a reason he fell to the 5th round. Probably he does max out at least this season as a 3rd-string quarterback. Maybe he can beat out Kellen Mond, and maybe he just joins the practice squad for this team. Although, again, maybe if him or Kellen Mond, but if DTR can completely turn some heads in camp here and he looks lights out in his preseason reps, there is a slight possibility that maybe he outplays even Joshua Dobbs and secures a backup quarterback spot. But I don't really see that in the cards for him, at least at this point in his career. Maybe you look at some of his tape and maybe you have a little concerns that his game isn't going to translate to the NFL all that well. But again, I went into a little bit of depth on 3 other guys that, again, if the Browns had their way, would not matter how or if they can perform in a Browns uniform, because Deshaun Watson, if the Browns have their perfect season, he is in for every offensive minute, every offensive snap for the Cleveland Browns, doing his thing. And how guys like Joshua Dobbs or Kellen Mond or Dorian Thompson-Robinson can perform in a Browns uniform would be a completely irrelevant question. But hey, sometimes it's the NFL. Injuries happen. Sometimes there are some stuff out of control of anybody else, and sometimes you have to rely on some backup guys, next man up. So that's why I do feel like it is important to go over who is backing up who in this quarterback room, even though it is obvious who the ideal starting quarterback for this team is going to be for the entire season. Thank you all for watching this far. If you made it into it, I will see you at the next video. Leave a like and a subscribe if you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about the Browns quarterback room down in the comments below. Once again, I'll see you in the next video.